The midday sun beat down relentlessly, and anyone caught in its rays could easily suffer heat stroke. But I, as a dark-skinned city dweller, was armed with a hat or bandana and a bottle of cool water. Despite my lively and active demeanor, around this time I would get equally exhausted, and if the opportunity arose, I would try to go to Lopez Mendez, a relatively secluded beach where I could enjoy the tranquility and wait for the heat wave to pass in the crystal-clear emerald water, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. I stepped out of an alleyway and looked around. I was a 16-year-old teenager, thin, and like most of the residents of this small town. I wore a shabby t-shirt and gray shorts, indicating my humble origins, perhaps even from a similarly disadvantaged family. I looked around in the hope of finding someone familiar. "Andrea, have you heard Mandillo's amazing new song?" "Oh yes, it's absolutely fantastic. I love his music. Have you been invited to Carlos's party this Saturday?" The conversation between the two attractive girls who had passed me was no longer audible, but I could distinctly smell the pleasant feminine scent and male fantasies began to populate my head. A minute later, I recovered and started looking for my friends again. As luck would have it, there wasn't a familiar face around. It was the perfect time to take a walk along the sandy shore and dive into the refreshing sea. Finding no one, I headed there alone. The hot sand burned my bare feet, and I ran into the sea to cool down my overheated body. On the way, I took off my t-shirt, and without taking off my shorts, plunged into the refreshing water. Only here and now could I feel momentarily happy. The midday heat had dulled all senses and desires, and only seawater could restore clarity of mind and sharpness of awareness. What a pleasure. These feelings and words merged in my mind as I immersed myself in thought and remembered the two charming girls I had met in town today. "Guo, buddy, what are you doing here?" I opened my eyes and saw Carlos, my old friend, someone so old that I couldn't even remember the circumstances of our friendship. "Probably the same as you, running away from the heat." "Yes, it's been quite a day," Carlos replied, wiping the sweat from his wet face with his right hand. He looked about the same age as me, equally tanned and, judging by the wear and tear on his clothes, not well off either. We both lived in the favelas, a district of shacks stacked on top of each other on a hillside. The dwellings, built from whatever materials were available, barely resembled houses with no windows and no furniture. A pile of old rags served as a bed directly on the dirt floor. I was a smart kid who solved complex arithmetic problems with ease, but for a life of crime, that was more than enough. So I decided not to waste time on what seemed pointless at the time, sat in school, and ventured into the world of crime. The world of crime was an integral part of the city. It seemed that half the population was made up of thieves and the other half of policemen hunting them down. Every day, in some remote district of the favelas or even in the city center, serious crimes took place, from muggings to the murder of a drug dealer. Thus, evening strolls, even in prestigious neighborhoods, could cost lives. Wealthy citizens preferred to travel only by car during these times, while the less well-off spent their evenings at home. Robberies in small grocery stores or boutiques, of which there were a large number, were perhaps one of the favorite ways for local delinquents to make a living. It was for this reason that I ended up in a juvenile detention center, along with others like me, but I didn't stay there for more than 6 months. "Hey kid, why are you walking around like you're half dead?" After those words, the counselor hit me in the back. Sparks flew from my eyes and my scratched back hurt even more. If in ordinary life I would have fought back, there I had to endure and suffer all the torture. And if a teenager showed weakness, he was beaten even more often. The counselors who were supposed to work on correcting the teenagers made them even angrier, and the principal, perpetually dissatisfied, never let go of the whip, which he used on anyone who was at hand. Each shack could accommodate up to 10 people, united only by the need for shelter. At night, we would gather there to sleep, and in the morning, without exchanging a word, we would disperse to attend to our own affairs, known only to ourselves. But let's go back to the beach where I found my old friend and comrade. "Just an ordinary day today. Nothing special," I replied. "What's new? We haven't seen each other for a while. Where have you been hiding?" Yes, there was a little adventure. I was one of those who had to survive alone in this cruel world. My parents abandoned me when I was still a child. They were thieves or drug dealers, but one thing was clear. They were connected to the world of crime. As for their current whereabouts, I had no idea. They could be dead, or perhaps rotting in some Mexican or Venezuelan prison. I didn't care. I never received anything from them that could link me to them in any way. In search of a living, I joined a gang that specialized in robberies, and at school, I learned enough to count money. Guo, education will help you make something of yourself, I regularly heard from my teachers, and rightly so. Teachers in the classroom used canes for the slightest deviation in behavior, and everyone had bloated stomachs from the cafeteria food and were constantly nauseous. Somehow, this information leaked to the newspaper, and an article entitled, "Yes, It's True," was published, after which a local priest disguised as a pilgrim visited the detention center and saw for himself that it absolutely did not fulfill its assigned tasks. This is where I spent my last 6 months, as I told my comrade Carlos. I don't envy you, but now, freedom. Live, enjoy, love the girls. By the way, look at those two beauties. Carlos pointed to 2 girls lying on towels under the scorching sun, about 20 meters away. The beach was deserted at the moment, so the young men could examine them carefully. They were wearing revealing bathing suits. It was clear that their fair skin was not used to the southern sun. One girl, in an equally light swimsuit, was lying on her back while the other carefully applied sunscreen to her shoulders, then started down her back to her buttocks. Europeans? Yes, probably tourists. I don't think so. I think they come here often. Tourists prefer crowded beaches like Copacabana or Muada. They probably don't know these remote ones. Yes, you're right. Probably locals, some rich girls. Which one do you like best? Carlos looked at me questioningly. Are you kidding? They wouldn't even let us get within 10 meters of them. Do you want to bet that within 5 minutes of meeting them, I'll know their names? You're a fool, Carlos. Why bother with rich girls? Do you want to bet? Whatever. What are we betting on? 2 bottles of cold beer, and I don't care where you get them, but they should be in my hands in 5 minutes. Deal. And we clapped our hands, as we usually do when making a bet. I was truly enchanted by the snow-white beauty and was already picturing our introduction in my head. At that moment, Carlos pulled me by the hand straight to the object of our bet. The girls, seeing the unknown guys approaching, weren't the least bit embarrassed. On the contrary, they seemed to almost expect to be noticed. Victoria and Isabella. Those were their names, and they looked about 18. From their appearance, you could guess that they didn't come from simple families. Victoria was the snow-white beauty. Her light curls were carefully pinned up and hidden under a small red hat, which was supposed to protect her from the sun, and her fair skin looked almost translucent in the sunlight. Her green eyes showed genuine interest in the young man who was approaching. Isabella was apparently of mixed heritage. Her skin was more tanned, and her black hair and dark eyes revealed her to be more of a local than a newcomer, but both were adorable. Hi, I'm Carlos, and this is my friend Guo. I'm Victoria, and this is Isabella, replied the blonde immediately. Of course I found out. The owners leave for their errands around 10 o'clock, and at that time only the servants remain in the house. How many are there? A maid, a gardener, a cook, and a manager. Yes, there are quite a few. I'll look after the manager. I'll distract him by talking about buying the house. The cook goes straight to the market to do the shopping after the owners have left, and the maid starts cleaning the rooms, I added. We need to get someone else involved. Do you have anyone you can trust? I think I can find someone. At that moment, I remembered Guo. I'd arrived at the family beach much earlier than we'd agreed to meet Victoria. I couldn't wait to see her again, and without waiting for the appointed time, I was already there. I sat on the sand, lost in thought. I looked out at the vast waves of the sea, bringing back memories of our first meeting. My heart beat so fast that it felt like it might explode with emotion every time I saw Victoria. I fell in love with her at first sight. Her smile lit up my world, but despite our feelings, there was something that always separated us. like an insurmountable barrier of social inequality. Victoria's world was full of luxury and privileges that I could only dream of. This inequality created a chasm between us that I couldn't bridge, despite my strong feelings for her. I got up from the sand and began to walk slowly along the coast, thinking how easy it would be to be with her, to forget all the restrictions and simply be together. But reality always returned, heavy and inexorable. "There you are, and I'm here looking for you." Carlos appeared out of nowhere. "What happened?" "You have a job, Guo." "If you're talking about robbing someone, I told you I'm out." "Guo, this time really will be your last, because that will guarantee you the rest of your days." Despite promising myself not to return to my previous life, I was intrigued by the offer. If it was true, I would have the means to be with Victoria from then on. I couldn't pass it up. "Yes, let it be the last time," I thought, nodding affirmatively to Carlos. However, Carlos didn't inform me of who they were planning to rob with the gang of thieves. But I wasn't worried about that at the moment. It was getting close to 10 o'clock when the group of young men approached Isabella's house. Carlos and I stayed in the shadows, waiting around the corner. Poeno, accompanied by an accomplice called Jose, approached the high gates and knocked on the door. "What do you want, sir?" "The owners aren't home," replied the manager, who appeared from behind the gate. He was a tall man in an impeccable white shirt. "I'm here to talk about selling the house. The owners told me I could inspect it." "I didn't receive any instructions," said the man, surprised. "Of course, you're just an employee. The owner doesn't need to inform you of his intentions." The man in the white shirt was a little perplexed. Yes, he was used to this kind of treatment, so he couldn't argue with the stranger. The house really was for sale, and Poeno looked like a wealthy gentleman. He was dressed in a black suit and expensive shoes. The manager opened the gates and allowed the stranger into the garden. Jose followed Poeno inside. "He's the appraiser," said Poeno, gesturing to the manager. His partner stopped in the middle of the garden and looked around. Yes, the place really was magnificent. Gentle paths led up to the two-story mansion, flanked by manicured bushes. A short man in uniform was busy in the garden, meticulously pruning leaves that interrupted the geometric perfection of a sphere-shaped bush. "He won't be a problem for us," thought Poeno. Together with Jose, they made their way to the house along the smooth paths. The manager walked ahead, without asking any unnecessary questions. On entering the mansion, they found themselves in a spacious hall, furnished with white leather furniture. Further on, there was the living room, with a long white table surrounded by numerous chairs. It was clear that the owners often received guests there. "Where do we start the inspection?" asked the manager, looking at Pino questioningly. "And who else is in the house if you said the owners aren't?" Pino asked the unsuspecting manager. "The maid is tidying up the rooms. She won't get in the way." "Let's go upstairs and start with the owners' rooms," suggested Poeno. As an experienced thief, he assumed that many valuable items would be stored there. Meanwhile, Jose typed a message on his old push-button cell phone to alert Carlos and me to the impending robbery. They had ropes and all the necessary equipment to scale the fence. Jose specified the gardener's current location in the message. Carlos and I stealthily made our way towards the house along the bushes so as not to be noticed. We hid in the garage whose gates were open. Carlos had previously discovered that there was a passage to the house. There, we waited for the signal. When he received the signal, Poeno would send another message to his partners, indicating that it was time to start. Poeno and Jose left the owner's room together with the manager, followed by the maid, who was about to clean Isabella and Matias's rooms. At that moment, Poeno signaled to Jose, who discreetly sent a message. "The owner's room is free. Proceed." Following this, the accomplices sneaked into the house through the garage. Meanwhile, Poeno, Jose, the manager, and the maid were inspecting Isabella's room. Unnoticed, Carlos and I went up to the second floor and entered the owner's bedroom. Yes, there was a lot to be stolen. Paintings by unknown artists adorned the walls. "These must be expensive," I commented, noticing Carlos also examining the paintings. "Don't even think about it. How are we going to carry these?" "Start opening drawers and looking for valuables," Carlos ordered. I put on white cotton gloves and started opening the drawers of the dressing table. There was everything. Necklaces, countless rings and earrings. I didn't know anything about precious stones, so I grabbed everything I could find. "Hurry up, what are you doing there? Help me!" At that moment, Carlos was sorting out antique figurines that were on the host's dresser. He had a talent for these things, so he began carefully packing them into a travel bag. "Did you find anything?" asked Carlos. "Yes, trinkets. I took everything." "Then help me." And I began to wrap each figurine in soft cloth, according to the instructions, and put them in the bag. It only took a few minutes. We discreetly left the host's room with the text message tips. Then we ran through the garage, making sure the gardener wasn't around, and left the same way we came in. "Thanks for showing me around, buddy," Bueno thanked the manager. Then he turned to Jose. "I hope the appraiser was able to value these apartments correctly." Jose nodded in response. "I'll inform the owners of my decision," he said to the manager, who was closing the gates behind them. "Now that's loot!" Bueno exclaimed as the partners laid out everything they had managed to find in their host's room. Like a true thief, he knew the value of these items. They settled into their hiding place, where no one could reach them. It was an abandoned place that had once served as a grocery store. The police never bothered with it because they didn't know of its existence, and the thieves could comfortably conduct their shady business there, knowing that no one would find them. There were countless such places in the city. "How are we going to divide this up?" I asked. "Evenly," replied Bueno. "That means I'll call my appraiser and then we'll split everything equally." "I want to take a ring now," I said. "You surprise me, Guo." Bueno looked at me questioningly. "The appraiser will come and you'll get your share. When will he come?" "Tomorrow night." The next night, the guys split the loot. With my share, I received what I thought was the most beautiful ring. It was very delicate with a red stone in the center. Victoria will love it, I thought. At the time, I had no idea who it belonged to or what this gift would mean to me. A week later, I returned to the beach where I used to meet Victoria. My heart beat even harder when I saw the girl approaching on the sand, her hair swaying gently in the wind and a smile lighting up her face. Victoria felt her heart beating as hard as mine. She loved me too, it was undeniable. My kindness, my humor, my ability to see beauty in the little things all made her feel special around me. She didn't need to pretend. She could relax and be herself with me. But she also understood that we could never be together. Our meetings would always be secret. Even Isabella, her best friend, didn't know that every night Victoria ran away to the beach to spend time with me, her first love. When we met, the air was full of tension. We both understood everything. Staring at each other, we remained silent, as if trying to convey our thoughts through our gazes. Then Victoria slowly approached and took my hand. "Guo," she began in a soft tone. "I know we can't be together, but I want you to know that I love you. I love you more than I can put into words." Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled at her and hugged her tightly. "And I love you, Victoria. Let me just love you. Be with you and love you." We stood there, holding each other, feeling time stand still around us. Despite the pain, we knew that our feelings would live on forever, even if we couldn't be together. "My dear, I have a surprise for you." My eyes lit up as I said those words. "Are you going to give me a present?" she asked interestedly. At that moment, Victoria, without suspecting a thing, closed her eyes. She was filled with feelings of pleasure and joy at the moment that was approaching. She usually received presents, but this one was special. It was from her beloved, so the feeling of joy overwhelmed her even more. "Open it," she said as she opened her palm, showing an elegant ring with a red stone. "How beautiful." Victoria couldn't contain her emotions and ran into my arms. "Try it on." I took her hand and tried the ring on the ring finger of her right hand. It fit perfectly. Victoria looked at me in amazement, but then her expression changed. "I'll take it, but I can't wear it. My father will ask questions. Do as you see fit. The important thing is that you accept it as a symbol of my love." Victoria couldn't wear the ring, but every night before going to sleep, she would turn it around in her hands, examining the gift and thinking about me. It looks expensive, she thought. Where did he get the money for a ring like that? What are you looking at? Asked Isabella, who was spending the night with Victoria. Oh, nothing much. Victoria hurried to hide the ring in the bedside table, but couldn't do it in time. Show me. Isabella giggled as she took the ring from her friend. Oh my God. Isabella was speechless, her eyes alternating between her friend and the ring. What is it? I asked, confused. It can't be. Where did you get it? I found it on the beach a few weeks ago, lied the blonde. Remember I told you we were robbed about a month ago? This is my mother's stolen ring, Isabella exclaimed. It can't be, I replied calmly. We need to check. Do you have a magnifying glass? Without further ado, Victoria went into her father's study, took out the magnifying glass, and handed it to her friend with a questioning look. There must be a letter engraved on the inside of the ring. It belonged to my grandmother, Adrian, and was passed down to us along with other family heirlooms. As the ring is thin, the lettering is only visible under magnification. After these words, Isabella held the magnifying glass in her hands. Look, as I said, the letter A is on the back. Adrian, triumphed Isabella, I can't believe you found this. On which beach? Why didn't you tell me immediately? As Victoria was bombarded with these questions, a knot formed in my throat. My thoughts swirled like a storm in my mind, destroying all the trust I had established. I could barely hold back the tears. Is Guo really the thief who robbed my friend's house? Maybe I was just a target myself, I thought silently, handing Isabella the ring and saying that I was too sleepy. A week passed and Victoria never showed up at the beach where we used to meet every night. For the first few days, I was filled with worry, thinking that something terrible had happened to my beloved. I fought off waves of anxiety and returned to the beach each time, hoping to see her. But gradually, the puzzle in my mind came together. I began to understand that her absence was no accident. The world she lived in didn't allow her to be with me, an ordinary boy who didn't even own a house. I realized that the social inequality that had always stood between us was the barrier she couldn't overcome. My heart broke into pieces. I tried to console myself with the thought that it was better for her, that she deserved more than I could offer. But the painful emptiness inside me didn't subside, reminding me of her absence. I kept going back to the beach every night, despite the pain and disappointment. The place where we used to meet was like a sanctuary for me, where I could feel her presence, even if she was far away. And in that solitude, sitting on the sand, I realized that my feelings for her would never disappear. I loved her, more than I could ever imagine, and even if we couldn't be together, my heart would always be with her. Victoria stood at the window of her luxurious room, her gaze lost. Her mind screamed that Guo was a thief and a liar, that he would never be worthy of her love and trust, but her heart wouldn't listen to reason. It always came back to those moments we spent together. Every day, Victoria remembered our meetings by the sea, the sounds of the sea, the cool breeze that caressed her skin, and most importantly, my warm touch. She remembered our first kiss, full of passion and tenderness which made her heart beat faster. She understood that she shouldn't have trusted me, that I could have used her to achieve my goals. But even in the darkest moments of doubt, when she felt everything was falling apart, she couldn't deny her feelings for me. Looking out of the window, she realized that even if we could never be together, my love would remain in her heart forever. Neither she nor time could erase the memories of what we shared, how I loved her and how she loved me. Another month passed. I almost sold my entire share of the loot. There was enough money to get false papers, which was exactly what I was looking for, because with papers I could finally find a job. Guo, really? I make more in a day than you do in a month, laughed Carlos. I want to learn how to live properly, I replied proudly. Good luck, but know that Poino won't take you back. He only let you go because you took part in that risky job. Carlos patted me on the shoulder, not believing that I would succeed. But I did. I started working as a stevedore at the port. The money was little, but it was honest. Sometimes the work was so hard that thoughts of returning to a life of crime crossed my mind, where I could get quick and easy money. But then, thoughts of Victoria and the bright part of my soul that she illuminated would pop into my mind. Remembering our meetings by the sea, I realized that I couldn't allow myself to dive back into the dark waters of crime. My love for Victoria gave me the strength to keep fighting, even when everything seemed hopeless. I knew I had to become a better person, even if I never saw her again. My love for her was an anchor, guiding me through the stormy seas of life. When I had weekends off, which was rare, I always went to that same beach, our secret place where we met a year ago. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where I could feel her presence, even if she was far away. I always went there, hoping to see her, hear her laugh, catch her scent on the wind. But the blonde was nowhere to be seen. The sand was empty, and the sea seemed much colder without her presence. My heart ached, and I prayed to see her again, even if only for a moment. In those moments of sadness, I would close my eyes and remember every detail of her face, every word she said, every moment we spent together. My memories of her were like a light in the darkness, sustaining me in the most difficult moments. That evening, when I returned to the beach again, I didn't even expect to see her anymore. There were few people around, and as the sun went down, the beach became even quieter and emptier. I stood on the shore, looking at the dark expanse of water and remembering. But suddenly, something snapped me out of this colorful world of fantasies. It was a woman's scream, abruptly interrupted. I saw a figure frantically waving its hands in the sea. Without hesitation, I plunged into the water. The force of the waves pushed me back towards the shore, but I fought against them, swimming to the right spot. As I got closer, I saw a girl being overwhelmed by a wave and drowning. Without thinking twice, I grabbed her and started dragging her to shore. It was hard, the current pulling me back out to sea, but I fought against it, as if my life depended on it. My heart was beating so hard that it felt like it might explode out of my chest, but I didn't stop, despite the fatigue and the effort.
Finally, I reached the shore, pulling the girl onto dry land. I lay on the sand, my strength deserting me, but I was happy. I had saved a stranger without considering the consequences, because that was the only thing that mattered at that moment, saving a life. I closed my eyes, still not understanding who I had saved. They needed to be taken to hospital urgently. I slowly began to regain consciousness. I rolled my eyes and saw several people around me. They all looked familiar, but their faces were blurred as if mixed up in a kaleidoscope of memories. At the center of attention was an agitated man in his 50s shouting something, but the sound seemed distant and indistinct. I tried to object, to stand up, to say that I didn't need a hospital, that I couldn't afford one, but my body seemed disconnected from my will and I couldn't move. I felt the drowsiness envelop me again, as if I were sinking into the abyss of dreams. And there I was again, on the beach, in that dream world where my desires came true. And then, out of nowhere, she appeared. Victoria.
Her beauty was breathtaking, and her smile made my heart dance wildly. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe that my wish to see her again had come true. I woke up in hospital. Why have you brought me here? I managed to get out, catch my breath, and I could have kept going. Now I'll never be able to pay for this medical care, I thought. Just then, a nurse walked in. As soon as she saw me awake, she ran into the corridor and called Mr. Paulo, the man in his 50s I had seen before, who entered the room. Now I could see him clearly and immediately recognized the mayor of the city. "You saved my daughter, risking your own life," he said, his voice shaking. "I'll cover your hospital expenses, don't worry about that. And in fact, ask for whatever you want." I didn't reply. I was still in a dazed state, vaguely aware of what was happening. Paul noticed this and tried to comfort me. "It's all behind you now. What's your name?" "Guo." "Guo, I'd be delighted if you'd have lunch with me and my daughter at our house." I want to thank you and discuss what you would like as a reward." I can't come to your house, it's impossible," I replied, worried. "I know how to be grateful and appreciate people who risk their lives for others. You should stay under medical observation for another day, and tomorrow my driver will pick you up, okay?" The next day, I got into an expensive car. I spent the night and morning thinking about the upcoming lunch. I didn't know what to ask the mayor for. Money, a job. The only thing I dreamed of was seeing her, but the mayor wasn't a magician. When I got out of the car and looked at the mansion, I couldn't believe my eyes. The first time I met Victoria, I escorted her to this mansion. It can't be, I thought. Is she the mayor's daughter? Did I save Victoria, or did they sell this house and now it belongs to the mayor? Millions of thoughts swirled around in my 17-year-old head. "Come in, Guo, mister." Paolo greeted me cheerfully and led me to the table. "Thank you, don't be shy. My daughter's savior is the most honored guest in this house. Sit down. My daughter will be joining us soon. She wants to thank you too." "What's her name?" I asked. But before I could hear the answer, the dining room door opened and I saw her, the fair-haired beauty I saw every day in my dreams. My heart raced at the sight of Victoria. She was there, as if she had come from my most precious dreams. Her hair shone in the light, and her eyes radiated a radiance that seemed to illuminate the world around her. "Guo, this is my daughter, Victoria," introduced Mr. Paolo. I could hardly contain my excitement as Victoria approached me. I could feel my heart beating so hard that it seemed ready to leap out of my chest. At that moment, all my doubts and fears dissolved into thin air. My dreams had come true, and Victoria stood before me, a symbol of my hopes and love. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Clearly, she hadn't expected to see me there. Her first love, the person she thought about every day, every second. "Victoria, I've been waiting for you." "Nice to meet you, Guo. My father told me you saved me, risking your life," said the girl, pretending to see the young man for the first time. I decided that she had either forgotten me or simply didn't want to go into details in front of her father. "Guo, tell us about your life. What do you do?" asked the mayor, and I began my story. I told them that I used to steal, but now I make money working at the port. I told them about my parents and my difficult life without hiding anything. I told them how I agreed to rob the mansion to get money for false documents. I told them everything except the identity of the girl I loved and the house I stole. The mayor was shocked by my difficult path. He felt the pain I was talking about. "Did you ever think of going back to the gang of thieves?" "I did," I admitted. "But every time I thought of her, that girl. Somehow, thoughts of her gave me strength." "Ah, first love," smiled the mayor. "And what's your education?" 4 years at school." "Not bad already. I think I know how I can repay you for saving my daughter." Paolo's face expressed complete satisfaction. He had finally figured out how to thank me. "Mr. Paolo, I don't need anything. There will be a place for you at the college in Guadalupe, so you can choose a specialty you like. I'll take care of everything." At that moment, I felt a sense of euphoria. Could it be that what I had dreamed of was coming true? Firstly, I would see her again, and secondly, I would receive an education. "Daddy, can I show Guo our garden?" As lunch approached its logical conclusion, Victoria took the initiative. We went out into the garden. The girl turned to me and looked into my eyes for a long time. We were silent, and then she said, "I came to the beach every time hoping to see you. I went to Europe never to accidentally see you, Victoria. But why?" "You gave me a stolen ring. It's Isabella's mother's ring. Her gang robbed their house." "Although, what's the difference?" the girl cried. She had held in her emotions for a long time, but now, being alone with me, she could finally say everything. "I hate you so much, you broke my heart. I thought you were using me to steal from us too." "That's not true," she said calmly, carefully wiping the tears from her face. "Now you know the truth. There are no lies in what I told your father. I love you, Victoria." "I love you too, Guo." The girl kissed me on the lips. Our kiss was soft, full of reconciliation and hope for the future. At that moment, we both felt the walls between us crumble, our feelings become clear and true. Perhaps we didn't know what the future held, but now we were together, and that was all we needed. In that garden, in our arms, we found peace and true happiness, which we had been looking for a long time.